I appreciate at the time of this recording, at the 4,000 plus subscribers that I have. I really do. And I know some of you reach out to me and you talk to me about how much I've helped you, and it really means a lot. And the other night I was having a thought about this thing that I'm doing, where I'm recording these videos for you, and thinking about you and your perspective, and what I must be doing to help those who are subscribers and who are tuning in. And I realized that there's one thing that I really want you to do that I haven't ever said before. And I think that it's really important to go ahead and say it. You know all of this. Everything that I've talked about in all of these videos, and that I will continue to talk about, don't worry. You already know. It's already there. It's already accessible. And there's a kind of a trick that I use, I guess. I don't know if it's a trick, but it's an approach that I think will really make a difference when it comes to you needing that clarity or that insight in your day-to-day life. And I'd like to kind of walk you through the process that I go through when I go to record one of these videos, or when I'm dealing with something in my life that needs that perspective, that divine perspective. So let's talk today about finding the divine perspective about absolutely anything that you're faced with or that you're experiencing. So let's get started. The first thing that I do every time when it comes to, okay, topic. You can throw any topic at me. I've been thinking actually about starting to do some public appearances again, see if I can book some things, because it's been a while after COVID and all that. And one of the thoughts that I've had is to go up in front of an audience and just go, what are your questions? What do you want me to talk about? And it doesn't matter what the topic is. And I will tap into this perspective and give the answer. So some of this perspective I will essentially channel, there's no doubt about it. But there's still an approach, a mindset, a thought process that I might follow to get kick-started in whatever topic I'm going to be talking about. And so that approach starts with looking at everything from outside of myself. So who am I? I am a 3D being that is also multidimensional. When we come into this world, we come in as a multidimensional being, completely confused about what the heck's going on. We are thrust out of the birth canal, and we have no idea who anybody is, what they're seeing, what we're seeing, because what we're feeling, what we're hearing, what we're touching, because our sensors, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our skin, really hasn't been turned on yet. They're there, they're operating, but once you get out of the fluid, then all of a sudden your eyes open, you're able to hear things with so much more clarity, you're able to touch things, you're not just in liquid all the time. And so this sensor overload, you hear about it all the time, the sensory overload begins. And you have no idea how to process any of it. And what you do is you learn slowly over time what things mean, what faces are, and what voices are, and what food is, and all the things that we learn. And when we take that perspective, when we look at our problems, it's very limited. When we look at things from our 5 senses, I'm going to say, of course there's 6 senses, even at the basic level, because you have that balance sense in your ears, right? So that your basic 6 senses really don't tell you all that much. There's an awful lot of interpretation that has to go on, and that interpretation is based on the slanted experience that you have as a child leading up to who you are now. So when we look at things from that 3D perspective, it's very flawed. So what's the first thing you've got to do? You've got to look at it from outside of that perspective. My favorite way to do that is to imagine your higher self and be your higher self as best you can. If you've never tried to do this before, I understand that you're thinking, okay, well, how the hell do I do that? And so here's one of the processes that I use, or at least here's one of the processes I teach. I don't usually use this because now it comes a lot faster, but this is a great starting point. So right now, go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to picture yourself sitting where you are, wherever you are. I want you to picture yourself seeing yourself as this being, this 3D being. Picture the clothes that you're wearing. Picture the room that you're sitting in. Picture the fact that your eyes are closed. Really, take a visual image of yourself. So once you've done this, now I ask, who is it that's looking at you in that 3D place? Well, you aren't that being anymore. You have stepped outside of your body, and you are now looking at yourself from some other perspective. Usually I picture it from a perspective of a standing view. So you're looking at yourself and you're standing in the room. Even if your 3D self, is sitting, you're at a higher level, you're almost looking down on yourself. So make sure you've done that too. Okay, so who is this? Who is this being that's looking at you? This is your higher self. And take a moment to observe yourself from your higher self's perspective. What do we know about your higher self? Your higher self believes, knows everything. Your higher self knows everything. Your higher self knows everything about you. And it knows everything that you signed up for in this life. It knows how the world works. It knows that everything is actually made of unconditional love. It knows that every molecule in your body is actually unconditional love. It knows that absolutely everything that you experience was pre-planned. It knows that you're doing the best that you can. You are a limited 3D being, no doubt about it. It knows everything. It knows all the secrets of the universe. It knows how absolutely everything was created. It knows how everything is going to go. It knows it all. And so if it knows all of this stuff, it also is free of judgment. It doesn't judge you and say that, oh, you should have done this or you should have done that. That's your 3D mind doing that. That's the way that you record your life experience. And you're, of course, going to be very harshly judging yourself because you know everything about all the decisions that you made. You know whether you were under the weather that day or whether you were just being lazy. You know all of this stuff. But your higher self doesn't care about any of that. Your 3D self does. Your 3D self says, oh, I didn't do this well enough. Your higher self says, you do everything perfectly every time. You've never made a mistake in your entire life. Everything that you've ever done has gotten you to exactly where you are right now. So when you look at yourself from that perspective, that unconditional loving perspective, then you don't have to judge yourself anymore. You get to go, okay, if everything's going according to plan, if I am made of unconditional love, if I've never made a mistake in my entire life, if everything that I've experienced is exactly what I've been supposed to experience or what I wanted to experience before I came here, then that gives you an incredible perspective on everything that's going on in your life. It gives you a judgment-free perspective. Okay, so what if you were doing that same exact thing for someone that you don't really like very much? Someone, an antagonist in your life, someone who's giving you lots of trouble or problems. Maybe it's someone at work, or maybe it's your romantic partner. Maybe it's your parents or one of your parents. Maybe it's a political figure or a CEO or something. So let's look at them. Let's pick your biggest rival, your arch enemy, whoever that might be. And now what I want you to do is the same thing. I want you to step outside of their body, which you're not in anyway, and observe them from their higher self's perspective. Their higher self is going to have the same exact perspective as your higher self does about you. Their higher self is going to say, you've signed up for all of this. Everything that you've done is exactly according to plan. You're trying your best. You're actually doing your very best. And the situations that have led you to this point totally make sense as to why your behavior is the way that it is. And when it comes to CEOs and political figures, the system is set up for the many things that you've done that most people don't like. But it's set up that way, so it kind of makes sense. But even from their higher self perspective, or even your higher self perspective, it doesn't even matter what the circumstances were that brought them to that situation. It was all according to plan. They are made of unconditional love. Everything is made of unconditional love. There is no judgment necessary. It's perfect. So when you look at everything from that perspective, there's a lot that starts to go away that's bad. All kinds of negative things start to melt away because really, there is no such thing as positive or negative. Your higher self doesn't say, that's good and that's bad. Why? Because that's a judgment perspective. Your limited 3D perspective with those sensors, those senses that have turned on, they have a signature associated with all events. And it's all based on survival. So if you're worried about something, it's based on survival. You're trying to avoid dying. If you really love something, that's based on survival. It's all about staying alive or furthering the species. Everything breaks down into those two categories. So, this 3D perspective that has this signature associated with every event is very unique to you or to 3D beings. Multidimensional beings, your higher self, doesn't have that. It doesn't have a survival mechanism. It doesn't have any reason to judge anything as positive or negative because your higher self is infinite. It cannot die. So there's no reason to try to survive or to avoid death or to further the species. It's unnecessary. So when we realize that, that's really the source of judgment. And you can step outside of that again, moving into that position of the higher self, looking at everything, going, everything happens exactly as it's supposed to. When something bad happens to us, we know immediately, we just know whether it was bad. We know it. It hits us powerfully. We don't even question it. We don't say, oh, well, I don't know if that was good or bad. I hurt myself. That was bad. I had an emotional experience where I insulted someone and felt terrible about it. That's bad. I didn't want this to happen because now I'm uncomfortable. I don't like being here in the cold. I shouldn't have done this. This is bad. Everything is you instantly know whether it's good or bad. You don't question it. You don't even take a moment to doubt it. You know. But what if you moved into that higher perspective and said, actually, they believe that that's good or bad. It isn't. It doesn't. There is no good or bad. Everything's fine. Everything is going according to plan. So from your higher self perspective, everything's great. So what if you took a moment during your suffering, whatever your suffering might be, and said, well, maybe this is actually not bad. Well, what is it then? Well, it's interesting. It's an experience. It has positives and negatives, maybe. Maybe it will eventually have positives and it doesn't right now. And right now it's obvious to the 3D being that it's very negative to them. But it's not necessarily so. First of all, you know that everybody has a different perspective. Some people like it hot, some people like it cold. For one person, good is bad for somebody else. Well, what if there was none of that? And everything was fine. Everything was it just is. And when you look at everything in the world from that perspective, the pressure's kind of off. You don't have to worry about anything anymore. So when we start from here and we start to dissect experiences in our lives or reasons for things happening, then it becomes a lot easier to reach that divine perspective. Let's do an example. The thought, I'm not good enough. This is a thought that we have at a conscious and a subconscious level. Sometimes we decide this, I'm not good enough to cook that, to make that meal, to play that song, to sing that song, to work as an engineer, to be loved, to not screw up. There's so many things that we say I'm not good enough. So what's the divine perspective? The divine perspective is, right now, this 3D being believes it's not good enough, but what's the actual fact? The actual fact is, that being doesn't need to be good at that, maybe, because that's not part of their path. Oh, actually, you're really good at that, but you don't remember it because of some childhood trauma or something that's gone on, something someone said to you. You've decided you're not good at that anymore. But the divine perspective is, yeah, of course you could. You could do anything. You could decide that. And anything great will happen as a result. Lessons will be learned. Expansion will be had. You are perfect exactly as you are. That's the divine perspective. Nobody screwed up when they made you. Nobody accidentally created you. It was all on purpose. It was all intentional. And it's all going according to plan. So to say, I'm not good enough, is definitely this 3D being that's saying that. Is there any truth to it? None at all. It's total judgment based on a 3D perspective. The higher self, the divine perspective is, you are perfect. I'm always tired all the time. What about that statement? If you say, I'm always tired all the time, oh my gosh, it's so wrought with problems, right? If I'm always tired all the time, what are you stating? You're putting it into existence that this is true. What would your higher self say? Well, maybe they're tired a lot or recently, but that 3D being doesn't have to be tired all the time. They could choose to take actions that would get them so that they're not tired all the time. And as this higher self perspective, you would say to that 3D being, well, the more that you believe that you're tired all the time, the more you make that true. So go for it. It's totally fine. That's your perspective. That's your choice. But you don't have to limit yourself in that way because you have actually access to unlimited energy available to you for your entire existence as a 3D being. You just choose to use it. If you choose to use the unlimited energy resources of the universe rather than your own reserves for anything you choose to do, then you will. That's how powerful you are. That's what your higher self knows. That's what the divine perspective is. But the 3D perspective is filled with limitation, doubt, questioning, judgment. We don't have to believe that we're going to be tired all the time. We can believe that, yeah, sure, I'm tired right now, but I'm not going to be tomorrow. Wait till I get a good night's sleep. Wait till I declare, universe, I'm going to use your unlimited energy instead of my own reserves today. You can just say that to yourself and watch what a difference it makes. So this is the foundation upon which really I build everything. I build everything in my own life and when I help others. So I hope this helps you. I hope this helps you understand this true divine perspective that you have available to you at any time. You never have to watch another one of my videos again if you grasp this, if you understand this. I mean, from my perspective, I prefer that you keep watching them. And so right now, you could comment and you could like and you could subscribe so you can see more. That's what I want you to do because that grows my YouTube channel, which grows my outreach, and I help more and more people. But you don't have to. You have the power within you to get all the answers all the time for the rest of your life and become essentially a guru. So anybody who walks up to you goes, what do I do about this? Just jump into that higher self perspective and teach them all about it. So speaking of that energy, There's a download that you can get off of my website that is an activation that really helps boost your energy levels. I would love it if you check that out. You can get the link to that in the description below. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for taking the time to integrate what I've said today. It makes a huge difference because my purpose is to help the world. It's to help wake things up, wake people up, to help give you a better life, to help create a better society one person at a time. So I love you unconditionally, and I thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video.